The Toronto Blue Jays lost their spring training matchup against the Baltimore Orioles tonight. It was 7-4. It was a close game. We saw some decent things out of the young hitters in the lineup, but the veteran pitching struggled quite a bit for the Toronto Blue Jays. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, gladly, the televised games are going to be back tomorrow for the Toronto Blue Jays. Although we could not watch this one, we were able to listen on the Fan 590. Ben Wagner does a fantastic job on there, but it was a bit of a rough go for the Toronto Blue Jays with their inexperienced lineup that they threw out there. And we tried to follow along as much as we could. And what I gathered from the game was basically that the young guys that we were excited to see did well today, and the veteran pitching that are battling for those final roster spots kind of struggled. So that was the story. That was the takeaway here.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm excited that the TV games will be back soon. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, but you were right on the money. Let's get into the first topic, which is, like you said, the young hitters continue to impress. Now, obviously, we weren't able to watch the game, like you said. We just had to listen in and go off of the radio, which is honestly pretty hard to do when trying to give, super great analysis. But we'll pop up the box score, because I know a lot of you guys, and majority of you guys, I'm assuming, did not listen to this game, because honestly, the roster wasn't really super exciting anyways. But the people that we're going to be focusing on today, we have, I guess 4 main people, with, of course, 2 focus. But Addison, Barger, Orelvis, Martinez, Nathan Lucas, and, of course, Zach Britton played very well today. And what were your thoughts on those guys, specifically Barger and Orelvis Martinez, as they continue to mash, bringing their averages both up to over 300, with Orelvis Martinez having a crazy 1,100 plus OPS?
Yeah, well, those two guys are going to be compared forever until one of them breaks through to the major leagues, and we'll have more on that and later on in this episode of Jays Digest. But yeah, they're going to be side by side comparisons for the rest of their careers. Whether they get traded, whether they stay with the Toronto Blue Jays, and they've been performing very well in the spring. And if there wasn't as much depth as there is, at least in the position player sense for the Toronto Blue Jays so far, then these two guys would have legitimate chances to make the team. But unfortunately, that's not the case, and they're probably going to spend the year in the minor leagues, although I do think Addison Barger will play some sort of a role in 2023. But yeah, they've been having good springs. Orelvis Martinez was very good last spring as well, so hopefully he can keep it up throughout the entire season, and same thing with Barger.
Yeah, and Orelvis Martinez's plate discipline has seemingly, improved a lot. Again, we couldn't watch today, but according to, Ben Wagner, is very, very solid. And throughout spring, it's been very, very good. And Addison Barger continues to just do phenomenal. He had another RBI today, but, I kind of knew, and we made a video about it a few months ago. We kind of knew that Addison Barger was, next up, doing very, very well. But I think you can agree to this, that Orelvis Martinez has kind of been the bigger surprise for me this spring regarding just the way that, he's playing, and he's making a case for himself to be there. But also shout out to Zach Britton, who is getting up there in age now. I believe he's 25 years old. He's only hitting 240 in spring, but he continues to battle. His defense is, his defense is not great, but I guess getting up there in prospects, I'll say. Getting up there in the prospect
Yeah.
age.
That's fair. Well, you could say the same thing about Nathan Lucas,
Yeah.
who's I think he's around 28, 29 now, and he's been a career-long minor leaguer. And if he's ever going to break through to the major leagues, it's now.
Yeah.
And out of all the prospects that we've been talking about, aside from maybe Otto Lopez, he's the guy that I would see playing a large role in 2023 because he's very versatile and he is a good player. Coming from the Rays system, or was it the
Don't
Guardians? I
remember. It was
believe
one of the two.
one of the two, and those are good organizations for developing talent, and he's a good player, so he'll be able to contribute if someone does go down. The only thing I am worried about is the pitching depth in this organization, and we'll get into that right now because Zach Thompson and Trent Thornton are two guys that could potentially pitch quite a bit this season if injuries do happen, because Mitch White is sidelined right now. And God forbid Yusei Kikuchi goes down, or even Jose Barrios, although he hasn't really been hurt in his entire career. But you never know. You never know what could happen. And these are the guys that you have to fall back on. And I'm not too confident. Although Zach Thompson's a bit of a better option than Thomas Hatch, I'm still not sold.
Yeah, and we talk about the bullpen depth that we have, and we do a lot of that, but the starter depth really is not there at all. At least proven starter depth. And I'll pop up the screenshot from today's game. and not great all around. So Zach Thompson went 3 innings pitched, giving up 4 earned runs, which is not what you want to see out of him. Matt Peacock continues to do well, but Trent Thornton, you look on the right there for ERA, and that's ERA of the spring. And Zach Thompson and Trent Thornton both have above 7, and those are your two, alongside Thomas Hatch, who I promise you does not have a better ERA than 7, are kind of the people who are supposed to be our depth starters aside from Mitch White. And we traded for Zach Thompson, and I believe we traded Chavez Young, a promising center fielder, but regardless, I don't know. It's not very promising at all. And then Luke Bard and Junior Fernandez, they aren't really starters, so I'll give them the pass for this section. But I don't know. Our long-term backup starters right now, or even for next season, it's not looking good. And that was like one of the main worries coming into this game because none of the major main guys pitched today.
Right, that's the thing. And, they didn't give up. Like we said, okay, we've been saying this all spring long, and we got to keep the same energy for each and every player that we talk about, right? So we can't judge them based off their results in spring training, but for the fringe guys like this, I mean, what else do we have to base it off of? This is what we know. This is what we know of Zach Thompson. We weren't avid Zach Thompson fans when he was pitching with the Marlins and pitching with the Pirates. Like, we had no idea of the guy. Same thing with Trent Thornton. Like, this is what we have. He's pitched a lot in a Blue Jays uniform, but we want to see what kind of pitcher he is now, and this is what he is. I mean, he's going to be a high fives ERA guy if he does break through to the major leagues, and I'm not very confident that this is the depth that the Blue Jays have to offer. I still think they should go out and get a starter at the deadline, even if it's a depth piece, someone better than what they have now, because they're really banking on them being healthy the entire season long, and I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, again, you look at Zach Thompson's ERA there, and it's above 7, and we obviously traded for him. But even when you look at the depth at our major league level with Yusei Kikuchi, phenomenal spring so far, but you don't have too much faith in him. Jose Barrios has not looked very well, so then you're kind of, if they don't perform well, then what are you doing? But I have a lot more faith in them than I do in these depth guys. But it seems like we have a structure built of cards at this point where if one injury happens, then it might start all to crumble down. But I don't want to get too grim. The season hasn't started yet, but it's definitely a concern and one that we can talk about in this game because there wasn't much else to talk about. But I think they do address it one way or another, whether it's at the deadline or even before the deadline. There's still time to make those changes, but I don't know. And Zach Thompson, again, I want to make this clear that I do have a lot more faith in him than any of the other options. He's been a fairly okay major leaguer for the Pirates.
Yeah.
I just think he's had a couple of weird outings, and it wasn't against a great lineup with the Orioles today. So I don't know, just an overall weird thing. But any final topics or touches on this topic before we move on?
I mean, I just think we saw last year the Blue Jays waited a long time to address the needs that they had, and they had glaring needs from the beginning of the season. And I don't know if it's really the case this year because they're going into the season with the deepest team that I've ever seen in my lifetime as a Blue Jays fan. That's including 2015. Okay, so I'm not worried about the team that they're going to start the year with. But let's say someone goes down with injury. Are you going to wait till the deadline to address that? And there's no such thing as a throwaway game. And we say it all the time. It's a long season. What are we going to do in game 92 when it doesn't matter? But they all matter. That 2021 season, they missed the playoffs by one game. And that could have been rectified if they didn't have Rafael Dolis pitching for the first 50 games of the season. So there's no such thing as throwaway games, and these depth questions need to be addressed as soon as possible, and they cannot wait. So if this keeps happening, and it seems like it will keep happening because, these are what these guys are. So I think they got to address it as soon as possible.
And we'll see if they do. And let's move on to the final topic now quickly. And it's still kind of, I guess, on the depth topic, but more so we'll have a quick discussion here, a minute or two, on Orelvis versus Barger, who we think has the brightest future going forward. And I'll ask you the question, Peter, then I'll give my answer, and then we'll wrap up. And let us know in the comments who you have more faith in going forward to be a bigger part of the Blue Jays organization and a better prospect. What is your answer to that question?
Let me know if this makes sense. Okay, so I think Orelvis Martinez has the higher ceiling.
Agreed.
But Addison Barger has the highest floor.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think Addison Barger is going to be a quality major leaguer. Like, there's no doubt about it. He's right there. He's this close. He's this close to getting into the major leagues and being a valuable contributor right away. but I think Orelvis Martinez has star potential. With that power that he possesses, with the arm strength that he has over there at third base, if he can clean some things up, the guy's going to be a star. It's just whether or not he can do it.
Yeah, I think ultimately Barger is going to have a more successful career, but
That's fair to say.
If Orelvis Martinez develops and he's continued to develop and he hasn't fully changed my answer, but he's done a good job attempting to this spring. If he, continues to improve with the glove and his plate discipline, then he, like you said, he has a huge ceiling and he could be like a perennial all-star. There's a world where he easily becomes a perennial all-star just because of his power, and he has raw power and he's gifted, naturally. So I don't know, that's my answer, and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the answer. Do you want to touch on anything revolving them before we wrap up?
I just want to ask you, let's say next year Matt Chapman's gone and Orelvis takes a leap. Who are you starting at third base?
I think I give it to Orelvis. I think I give it to Orelvis
Really?
just
Okay.
because if he takes a big leap, what he could do he could be a unbelievable player, MVP candidate player based on his tools. But
Oh, that's hot. That's a hot take.
it is a bit
That's a
hot
hot take.
take,
Let
but
us know what you think. Let us know what you think about that hot take there.
yeah, and let us know if you've been enjoying the content. It's the slowest part of spring training. We're halfway through. Guys are starting to dial it up. Some guys are starting to dial it down depending on what's happening. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow.
Thanks.